Oh, I'm going to say this and then edit it. But you can get any timestamp for the podcast in the description. The timestamps are important if you're not a big podcast guy. You can just skip through it. What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman, and I'm overly amped up. I mean, I can't even do the intro. I can't even get into the other hubbubaloo from this weekend without addressing the elephant in the room. The Bills do what so many people thought was impossible. They were underdogs on their own home field after being undefeated all season long. And Austin, I am so fucking excited.
I was so happy to be wrong about my picks this week. That pick specifically. I was pulling for Buffalo so hard. I'm sorry, any Ravens fan that could listen to that, but no. Dude, I was so amped. It's going to be hard to lead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're quite literally like 10 minutes removed from this game.
Yeah.
Like, the game ended, and we both hopped on our setups, and we're going to be flying for this game's recap off of complete vibes. Like, this game was, we just watched it, no numbers, no nothing. We are going to be telling you what we saw and how exciting it was, because I'm not going to out him or anything, but being a Bengals fan, like Austin is, he probably wasn't rooting for the Ravens like a lot of people might have been.
No, like the Bengals-Bills history goes back to like Andy Dalton hitting Tyler Boyd against the Ravens to get you guys to the playoffs. So like the Bengals-Bills tandem is deeply rooted. So that was the kind of game that like I had to watch standing up in my living room. I could not, like this one right here, like I could not sit down for the last half of this game. Yeah. I don't know how any Bills fans' heart rate was anywhere below 100.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying. I remained very calm throughout the game. I, of course, expressed emotion when the big plays happened. But, I mean, the way this game went, I didn't find myself, like, truly in a state of doom. Like, I never thought to myself, okay, this is getting away from us, or, okay, this is really, really bad. Like, there were moments where the offense stalled, especially in the third quarter, which is a specialty of the Bills offense. We are notorious for being excellent in the first two quarters. And then in the third quarter, coming out of half, we just stall. We can't get anything going. And then in the fourth quarter, we have to play a little bit of catch up. So I wasn't honestly shocked by that. But that was the only period of time where I was really slightly uneasy. It was kind of similar to how I felt against the Broncos. It's like the Ravens were within reach. And granted, this is much different because the Ravens offense is much more capable of explosive plays, but we just felt like we were winning in the important areas, and it made for the result that we saw.
Yeah, I was nervous, but only on the drive where they ran it the entire. I think they passed one time and they had a full touchdown drive on just runs. That scared me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the final drive, where they couldn't get pressure or cover anyone. I don't know where everyone was. But they weren't doing anything right in the last drive except for, I mean, the last play actually still wasn't good defense necessarily. He just dropped it. It was not a good throw, not a good catch, I guess. It was an okay throw, but God, my heart rate was through the roof. It still is. I am jittery. I am so jittery from that game.
I was while watching that drive you referred to, and they ran it every play, my reaction to that drive was, okay, fine, but the offense can't go 3 and out. The offense cannot have a 2-minute drive, because what I was thinking was what happened to Pittsburgh in the wild card round, where the Ravens had that drive where they they didn't throw it once. They went like 80 yards and ran it like every single play. And I'm like, okay, they're capable of that, but what can't happen is we just throw those same guys back out there to do it again 2 minutes later. Like, that's when it gets bad, because they're too exhausted to deal with that. But fortunately, the Bills offense, they converted a few third downs, they moved down the field, and they put together a drive that made it so that could not happen again. So it really came down to the offense, that the following offensive drive that was huge for me.
I know. Well, one thing that we're trying to do this episode is try and come up with an MVP of every single game, every single team from every single game. And this was the hardest one that I had, to pick a best player from the Bills. Who did you end up picking?
Yeah, I mean, it was very tough to come up with an MVP. In fact, I still haven't put one down in my note sheet, so I'm probably just choose one off the seat of my pants here, but the first guy that probably comes to mind is probably, I mean, it might be, this is strictly based off of the bigger plays I saw. It might have been Damar Hamlin. Like, as corny as that might sound,
Yeah.
Damar made 2 plays that I can recall that were huge. One of which being the fumble. Lamar Jackson was one-on-one with Damar in the backfield, open field. Lamar tried to shake Damar, and Damar got his leg, held him up, and Lamar tried to spin away, and he ended up dropping the ball. Like, that's a tough tackle to make in the backfield. And Damar, obviously ended up being a huge reason why Lamar dropped that ball. And then he also had a tackle on Derrick Henry. There was one run Derrick had where he had that full head of steam, and it's like he's fucking gone. Like, you could tell the second he gets out of the off the line of scrimmage and he breaks through the front 7, like, holy shit, he's gone. There's the freight train. And it happened, but Damar cut him down. He was the last man back, the only one standing there, and he managed to clip him enough and take him to the ground. So Damar Hamlin is honestly going to be the guy that comes to mind first. But the running backs were excellent. The linebackers from Buffalo, Josh Allen, Matt Milano. I can't stop thinking about Josh Allen. I mean, who can't? Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard made a few big plays. But yeah, like it can go to so many people, so many different units. But I guess I'll go Damar for the splash play. The splash plays I remember.
Yeah, I did have Damar. He was one of the 4 that I wrote down. I tried to do something other than Josh Allen because I know he played a great game, but it's like statistically he really didn't. So I was trying to pick someone that probably would have. So I was between Deion Dawkins, who I felt like their runs to the left side and in pass pro, I felt like everything was super clean. So I was like, well, who's over there? Yeah, Deion was pretty clean. I went with Ed Oliver, who especially earlier in the game when Derrick Henry couldn't pray for a yard, they were shooting the gaps. Like, they were penetrating and they were crushing them. So Ed Oliver made a few kind of splash plays, as much as a defensive tackle can really get against that front. I had Matt Milano as the other one besides Damar, because it felt like somewhere in the middle of the game, like Matt Milano touched the football on every play, like on the batted pass on the 2-point conversion that ended up
in my mind.
That ended up winning them the game pretty much. So yeah, Matt Milano might be my player of the game, especially considering he didn't play in the first time around. And I know a bunch of Ravens fans were kind of making fun of that, saying like it wouldn't have mattered anyways, and they were just going to do it again. And then they'd show the clip of Lamar breaking Milano's ankles from a few years ago. But it ended up actually really mattering. Like, there's a difference between Dorian Williams and Matt Milano for full quarters. So like, yeah, it was awesome. I am so proud. I am so proud of Matt Milano.
Oh yeah, he was excellent. I mean, the difference is tremendous, especially when it comes to being a spy. I mean, Lamar is nearly impossible to contain 9 times out of 10, but there really weren't too many plays where he got out, and he didn't do it consistently. Let's put it that way. He had a few plays here and there, but it wasn't something that the Ravens were able to lean on any given drive. There was like 1 or 2. There was, I think, 1 play on the first drive where Lamar did an average Lamar escape type of play, and that was really it. Like, I could not, I really can't remember off the top of my head any other time where Lamar really got loose and beat Milano or beat anybody. Quite frankly, he got edged to the outside almost every single time he tried to escape. And I think that was back to the last drive where it didn't seem like anything was working. I think that was the problem, was the Bills were overly containing Lamar, and he just had 45 years in what felt like a 50-yard pocket. I've never seen a pocket that big in my life. Like, I need to screenshot of that. Like, I'm going to go and find that, because it literally looked like, it looked like there were guys like an army, like a wall built around him, a bubble. And he finally was able to find Bateman in the end zone. And I think that was just being overly cautious and being too worried about Lamar running, which, I mean, I guess I get, but he hadn't been doing it all game. So I feel like it was a little bit too conservative, but nonetheless, excellent game from, and I think, oh man, I can't remember who tweeted it out, but someone said this is a linebacker and running back game. And that's really what it felt like too.
Yeah. And they got one of the better ones in the NFL back from injury. And that was, I mean, that's their defense. I remember Bills fans were so upset that they couldn't find their run defense earlier in the season,
Mhm.
but one of the top linebackers in the NFL was out. So, I mean, that makes a humongous difference. But going on top of that, Lamar I thought, played a pretty good game despite that. Did you pick him as your MVP for the Ravens? Or did you go somewhere else?
Well, my MVP for the Ravens, it's tough. Like, I feel like I could go with Lamar, but as much as everyone's gonna throw tomatoes at Mark Andrews on his way out of the stadium, or on his way flying back into Baltimore, I should say, like, Lamar still had that bad pick trying to get to Bateman. He still had that fumble. Mark Andrews' slip ups might have felt more costly because of the timing of them, which, sure, you can argue that. But that doesn't change the fact that Lamar cost the Ravens 2 possessions earlier in the game, too, that could have altered the game. So I feel like I find myself having a hard time giving it to him for that reason. But otherwise, it's kind of tough to think who I would give it to for Baltimore, because I can't recall that many splash plays. I mean, maybe, Bateman had a couple long catches. I thought the interior offensive line in the third quarter for the Ravens, I guess, maybe for that time period could get it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's tough. Vaughn was kind of a non-factor, though, and he was out there quite a bit. I think he was going against Rosengarten. Is that?
He had a good game.
Yeah, I think I might, I guess, for the sake of trying to be slightly different, I might go Rosengarten, because Von Miller.
That's such a random.
Yeah.
That's a random MVP, but he played a great game. From everything I saw, Rosengarten was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing a game to go to the AFC Championship, you can't be having your rookie right tackle be your MVP.
No, you cannot.
As well as he played, like, you have to have your other guys make the splash plays. I picked Kyle Hamilton.
Okay.
Because he did get beat, I think, once or twice, but he also was the only one that I felt consistently made plays like that were a little bit outside of his realm. Like, there were a few times where they'd throw a screen and he was pretty far away, but he sniffed it out pretty well.
Yeah.
And got them in a few 3rd and longs that made the game a little bit more uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, him and then second half Derrick Henry were the only guys I could really think of that took over the game at any point. So I think the Ravens were kind of lucky to be in it. The score felt closer than the game really felt. It felt like Buffalo had control the entire time. But yeah, I mean, I guess Kyle Hamilton's my answer. But yeah, it was hard to find an MVP from either of these teams, because this was the one game where I felt like it was just team versus team. And it wasn't like no player in general really stuck out, good or bad.
Yeah, it was the total opposite of what it was made out to be. It was made out to be Josh versus Lamar, and it turned out to be Buffalo versus Baltimore. And this is a completely random tangent, but this is what I love about Buffalo. This is what I love about football more than anything, is like, this was the embodiment of the sport at its core. It was all about team play. It was all about what unit was going to beat what unit. There were mistakes made by multiple players on both sides at different points. But, like I said, it was the embodiment of the sport at its core, was just how team oriented it was. And like a sport like the NBA, I feel like they do a lot more propping up of the superstars, the players, than they do the teams. And I think that's kind of what we all fell into these last few weeks, talking about Lamar versus Josh, when in all reality, and this game goes to show for it, it was Buffalo versus Baltimore. And that's what it was. Lamar made 2 costly mistakes. Josh wasn't, the superstar Josh Allen we've seen him be before, but it was just team versus team, and the better team won. And that was what I enjoyed about it a lot.
Yeah, and what I love about football is that, like, conditions change so hard. Like, you can go from playing in a dome one day, you can be playing in Miami in 95-degree weather, and then you can play in, I don't know how cold it was, but freezing cold Buffalo. It looked like every ball stung people's hands. But that's the beauty of it, is like being able to adapt to whatever's thrown your way. So it's a lot more coaching involved than any other sport.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then that's kind of what I wanted to lead into with the Eagles and Rams game, because it looked like whatever game plan those teams had was out the window the second that blizzard hit. And that was a crazy game from start to finish.
Oh yeah. The Eagles Rams game, I know I'm gonna have conflicting opinions about when it comes to Jalen Hurts. Not with you, but
God.
when it comes to the internet, because when I was, after I watched the game, I, go back and look at the numbers that I can scrounge up. PFF did get around to posting their stuff pretty quick, so I appreciated that. The all 22 didn't get up in time, but I watched it back a little bit, and one of my other favorite pastimes is looking up the names of specific players on Twitter that I want to see specifically. And Jalen Hurts, I of course had to look up because I was interested to see the general opinion and to see if there were any statistics that I can come across that would speak to his game a little bit more than how I was viewing it. But I really couldn't find any. To me, it was either Eagles fans talking about how he did his job and they won, or it was just anyone else that had a brain that wasn't an Eagles fan watching that game, just expressing how poorly he was, how poorly he played. I mean, this game to me was another embodiment of how important the team is. Like, the Eagles, once again, as a team, were able to overcome a very good Rams team despite their quarterback being I would argue a detriment. I would argue a detriment.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like they won despite of him.
Yes.
Not because of him or even with him. Like, they won even though he played a pretty bad game. And it feels like we go on the same tangent every week about Jalen Hurts being overrated. And I hate using overrated because everyone rates him different. And I don't think he's bad. I don't think that he's always just a bad quarterback. But I think when he starts reaching that Justin Herbert tier, that Matthew Stafford tier, is when I have to kind of pump the brakes on everyone and remind them that he has one of the greatest supporting casts since I've been alive. Like, there is not a weakness on that team, and it showed because when he started playing bad and he took one of the worst sacks I've ever seen, Saquon Barkley took it upon himself, and the interior offensive line took it upon themselves to win that game in a blizzard. And I give my MVP to Saquon Barkley. I don't feel like that should be too controversial after how dominant he was. But I also could see you giving it to the offensive line or anyone on the defense, really, in the second half, because that was a really good, well-rounded football game, despite some pretty shaky quarterback play.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon's the obvious choice, right? And my immediate follow-up was 3 defensive players. Of course, the offensive line deserves credit, but I kind of lumped them in with Saquon in a way. So with that said, I feel like my first runner-up was Jalen Carter. I mean, Jalen Carter was a one-man wrecking crew again, but he didn't have to be a one-man wrecking crew because the rest of the defensive front was also a part of that crew. But Carter himself was a phenom. I think he had a pass defend at the line of scrimmage. I'm pretty sure. I think I wrote it down. Well, what I did was I actually wrote down the combined stats of Carter and Nolan Smith because Nolan Smith was also phenomenal. They had, I think, 10 pressures combined. Nolan Smith forced the fumble on Stafford. Oh, Carter had the fumble on Kyron, which was game-saving. Jalen Carter had the 2 final pressures on Stafford on the last drive when it looked like they were going to do the impossible and, come back from 2 scores in the last 3 minutes or whatever. It was like 3rd and 2. Jalen Carter just swims past Bo Limmer and sacks Stafford to get it to 4th and 10, I think is what happened. And then on 4th and 10, Jalen Carter beats Bo Limmer again, and he forces an errant throw. Jalen Carter, you can argue, won the game by himself at certain points. And same thing with Nolan Smith with the fumble he forced. And I also thought Darius Slay played well. He got, per PFF, got targeted a lot more than I thought he did. But outside of that big bomb to Puka on that final drive, I thought he had a few big pass breakups. Puka had like 5 catches for 60 yards outside of that final throw, that throw and catch. So he was bottled up. I think Darius had a lot to do with that. I didn't get to really watch it back, but I thought Darius Slay made a couple of splash plays that were worthy of pointing out as well.
Yeah, I mean, he almost had a pick six on like the first pass attempt of the game.
Yes.
Like it was right in and out of his hands. Like he was in position all game long on Puka. He played an outstanding game. I also wrote Mekhi Becton because for being someone that was made fun of for just being a big fat oaf and injury prone for the last like 3 years, he leaves hell in New York and goes to Stoutland University for one single year in Philly, and all of a sudden is run blocking at an all-pro level.
Yep.
So straight kudos to Mekhi Becton for turning his career around in a single offseason. He should have been a Bengal. He visited us and left with no contract. So, I feel great about it. Yeah, that was just a weird game. That was one game I didn't get to watch every snap, but I watched most. And that was Jalen Carter was the defensive player I had written down as the one whose name I heard the most and the one who I saw the most. I saw him pick Matthew Stafford straight up in the air and wielding him around like a trophy that he just sacked. And he's slowly emerging himself into that top echelon of defensive tackles. And the production isn't quite there, but like he is just he's a monster. He is wrecking games himself inside, and I think that he absolutely could earn defensive player of the game if that's an award that we give out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I won't insult Dexter Lawrence like this, but it feels like the level of dominance that Carter has played at, the big moments he's come up big in. Dare I say, in a year's time, who knows? Is Jalen Carter going to reach that tier of defensive tackles? Because he really was that type of game wrecker. I mean, he probably isn't nearly as good of a run defender. That's probably where he differs. Yeah. But in terms of rushing the quarterback, I mean, he's been one of the best, for a lot of the season. So on the Rams side of things, I had a hard time choosing an MVP for the Rams. I ended up going with Jared Verse and the pass rush for the Rams, just generally speaking, because they made Jalen Hurts look like a JV quarterback. They had 7 sacks on 14 pressures. That's kind of a stupid stat. And then one, of course, being the sack that was in the end zone for the safety, which I came to find out Kobe Turner nor Jared Verse were on the field for. So that was a little bit weird to me. But nonetheless, Jared Verse himself, 5 pressures, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. He did all he could.
Yeah, that was the guy I had written down. So I'll go to my number 2 in Matt Stafford, who, when the elements were even manageable, he did the best he could.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the ball was grippable, he was slinging it. Like aside from the first pass of the game, the first few drives, he was dynamite.
Yeah,
every pass was tight window, slick, on the money. He didn't get a bunch of help from his line later in the game. And I mean, the game just fell out of place considering it was a borderline blizzard, and Philly just turned up the heat once the receivers can't really separate, once they can't catch traction, you can just turn the blitz on. You can just release Zach Bond and release Nolan Smith, penetrate Zach Carter, and it was wraps. But he played a good game, all things considered. I don't remember his exact production, but it was a lot better than I thought it would be for being in a snow game. Kyron looked pretty good for a while, again when he had traction, and then the Eagles just started penetrating the gaps, and he was done. Had the horrible fumble that ended up costing them all momentum that they had. So if I can't put Verse, I'm gonna put Matt Stafford, which it feels like a quarterback award, but for as old as he is, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, Stafford. I mean, you can. I feel like we kind of were saying the same thing last week with Philadelphia, but if they're not, kind of bailed out by a turnover, then who knows how this game goes. Like Kyron dropping that ball was huge, and like you said, they had all the momentum in the world right before that happened. They just forced the safety. And Stafford himself, I think he had 130 yards on the final 2 drives, and it looked like he was going to pull off the impossible, which would have been crazy given the conditions, given how insane that defense was humming. And I think it was, I can't remember who called the game, but one of the commentators said they figured it out too late. And because they just started going no huddle, they were going quick, and it really started to slow down the pass rushers. And it makes you wonder, like, if they would have picked up the tempo sooner, what this game could have looked like, because Stafford had them driving the field at will in the most important, probably the most difficult stretch of the game. So I think Stafford, he had like 320 yards or something like that, 2 touchdowns, I think. So he probably would have been I think he almost was my MVP, but I guess I docked him for the fumble, which also was pretty massive.
It's fair. Yeah, it was a weird fumble. It felt very avoidable.
Yes, it did.
All things considered. And then it hit the ground, and he was just defeated. Body language was over. The game was done at that point in his mind. And I mean, the game was pretty straightforward, honestly. It flipped on its end. The Rams felt like they had a lot of momentum at one point in the game, even though they weren't really winning. It felt like they were coming back, and they were coming back hot. But Philly, it just felt like had bigger and better athletes, which is really weird. Like, it felt like LA had the scheme to win. But like you've used before, it felt like they all had like the golden star in Mario Kart, whatever you call that. Like they just felt like they were faster and stronger, and eventually Bo Limmer and co couldn't keep up, which is sad to say, but like sometimes getting these Georgia Bulldog athletes on your front seven is how you win football games. And I can't tell you how many Georgia players they have on their front seven, but it's more than 3. It might be 4, which is insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, kudos to Fangio. It felt like at some point it clicked, probably somewhere around mid to late second half, where it felt like the Rams were just defeated.
Yeah.
Fangio had them. He was releasing the hounds. And it was just a really good football game, adjusting from what seemed like pretty irregular weather to horrible weather. But what's really fun to see is a good weather game and what kind of shootout you can get, like we saw in Detroit versus Washington, which in that game, it was almost hard to pick an MVP because so many players played well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, my difficulty with the MVP was on the Lions side of the ball. Now, I ended up deciding, but it wasn't easy. Like, Detroit, that was the worst possible game Detroit could have played, and it was pretty damning. Like, now all of a sudden there are bigger questions being asked, and it's not as much like, is this team not good enough? But now it's getting to the point where people are like, is Jared Goff even the guy? Like, is Jared Goff just this glorified bridge quarterback that, can't live up to the big moments? Like, do they have to move on and pull a Los Angeles Rams and trade him away to go and get their version of Matthew Stafford? Like, now those questions are starting to rise. And I don't know how I feel about it yet, because I feel like this season was just a catastrophe for so many different reasons that I think they did a good job of working through. Mm-hmm. But it was not his best performance, and I would like to think that in a game like this, I could go ahead and give it to the quarterback, because like in the Rams case, I still wanted to give it to Matthew Stafford despite how it went down. That just wasn't the case for the Lions. I went with Jahmyr Gibbs, though, who was a monster, quite frankly.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs was awesome. And then I put 2 guys that kind of have to do with Jahmyr Gibbs. Penei Sewell is always the easy answer for me. I don't know how many pressures he gave up. I know he gave up 0 sacks, and he was fantastic as a run blocker. It felt like the run worked whenever they asked it to. Mm-hmm. But the game got to a point early where they couldn't really keep running the ball. Like, they kind of had to come back, and unfortunately it didn't work out. But the other guy I put was Christian Mahogany, who filled in for the injured Kevin Zeitler. And he's a young guard out of Boston College, I believe, that was a guy I was pretty high on in the draft process. And I think health reasons are the reason he slipped. and fell to Detroit, but he was a monster. He did give up 1 sack, but as a run blocker, I think PFF graded him as like 91 plus. Like he was awesome. And it's a shame that Detroit didn't really get to keep their run game going or chose not to.
Yeah.
But they were crushing in that aspect with Jahmyr Gibbs, and they lost that. Do you know off the top of your head or written down how many passing attempts Jared Goff had? Because it felt like too many.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know that number off the top of my head, but Gibbs had 12 touches in the first half, and he finished the second. He finished with 20, so he had 8 in the second, which bad. I mean is inexcusable. The guy on 20 touches finished with 175 and 2 touchdowns, and he led the team in targets. He led the team in targets, which is ridiculous. So it just felt like it did feel like they got away from what was working a little bit too early, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs and the run game. Like, I understand that there probably was more of a sense of urgency because they knew their defense was going to be tough for them to buy a stop. So they knew time was of the essence. They were going to have to try and churn out points a little bit quicker because they were down. But he was far and away their best skill position player. He was far and away the guy that they should have been prioritizing, giving the ball. And it just felt like they got away from it. I mean, I also wanted to highlight the decision by Ben Johnson on what was a must-have drive to go ahead and let Jameson Williams, of all people, like, this is one of the last reasons why they ultimately lost. But down 10, must-score drive. You reach so far in your bag and pull out a fucking Jameson Williams trick pass. Like, that is the last human being on almost any unit in the NFC that I would want making a judgment call on a pass play. No. I feel like anyone would know that, other than, I guess, the guy that's supposed to know the players the most.
Well, this is something that we kind of talked about last episode, was obviously Ben Johnson with a pen and paper can design his ass off. Like, that guy can come up with anything, and it works a lot. But when it comes down to like critical play calling and critical decision making, as a head coach, this would also be, that did not look good. Like, that is not a move you can make. You can't show off in a game that would send you to the NFC Championship. And it feels like he almost tried to show off, because I know you want to get the defenders on their toes, but I would just so much rather have Jared Goff passing, even if the defense knows it's coming. I would rather have the guy that has been trained and paid hundreds of millions of dollars to play football in his life as a quarterback over the wide receiver that is, I don't know how many pass attempts he has in his career. I would bet money it's under 10. So that was just a blunder of decision making.
It reminded me, not to cut you off, but it just popped in my head. It reminded me of the last time the Bills played the Ravens, and they were trying to mount the Bills were trying to mount a comeback, and Joe Brady pulled out the like weird flea flicker double pass bullshit. I don't know. He pulled some trick play out that he has not called since. I don't think we've seen a trick play since from Joe Brady, but it was so out of character. It was very random, and it completely killed the Bills' opportunity to try and come back against the Ravens in that game. And that's what this kind of reminded me of, to an extent. Like, I saw some people saying, well, Ben Johnson has to do that because you can't trust Jared Goff to, continue to pass his way back into this game. So Ben Johnson feels like he has to pull plays out like this. It's like, look, I might not know Jameson Williams personally, but I know based on his track record, his public track record, that he is not a good decision maker just in life.
No.
Like in 2023, he got suspended for PEDs. He got suspended for gambling. I think he got arrested on an unregistered gun charge. Like, the guy's just not a good decision maker. Like, and you trusted him to not throw that ball into double coverage. Like, I think Brett Coleman even tweeted it out. Like, Jameson was letting that shit rip, no matter if he was in octuple coverage, if that's even a fucking word. Like, he was going to throw it no matter what.
It didn't matter. It did not matter. I was thinking so hard of how to put into words that Jameson Williams gambled that with that play, but I couldn't figure it out. I'm so glad it came up. But God bless, it feels like the same exact thing every single time with Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, where it feels like they have the game in control, and then they just do something so weird that takes them out of the game. Like it feels like they can't just lose a game playing regular comeback football. They have to do something stupid. They have to go for it on fourth a million times. And this is the one time it felt like they did. Like this is the one time where it felt like they could have gone for it on fourth a little bit more than they did. Not that they should have, but like they definitely were in position to, and they chose not to. They chose to punt more than I really thought they would. Had no answer for Jayden Daniels, and that was something that Tom Brady kept bringing up, was that Aaron Glenn's defense was figured out within the first few minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that earned him my MVP, Jayden Daniels. It felt like he had everything under control for a rookie. He was smooth and productive, and he kind of just dropped Aaron Glenn's coaching stock a little bit. So, he got my MVP.
Yeah, he got mine too. It kind of felt like a no-brainer, similar to Saquon. I mean, I think Jayden finished with 350 total yards, a 71% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, and he led the team in rush attempts. So it was him. It was all him, and that's what it was like last week. It was like this week, and kind of the type of brand of football you referring to that the Lions like to play, aggressive, always going for it on fourth down. The Commanders have been doing that to their own benefit this season, and it worked out for them in this game too. And Jayden was ice cold on fourth down. The only time they didn't convert on fourth down was when Mariota took it, and then Brian Robinson tackled him on that first drive. I don't know what kind of bullshit attempt that was, but the play completely broke down. I don't know why they got too cute. They should have just tush pushed it. It was 4th and 1 and it broke down. But every other time they just let Jayden do it, and he converted every single time. And all 3 of those conversions that they got the first down on led to touchdown drives. So, he's so poised. It's such a good word for
unreal.
Poised. I've never seen any rookie be this poised. I mean, and veterans struggle to be this composed on big stages. So it's impressive.
Yeah, I know. It was.
Did you say Darnold?
No. Dude, I feel like doing something a little irresponsible with Jayden Daniels, but it's I don't know what number to put him on in my QB rankings, but it feels irresponsibly high.
Mm-hmm.
And I am totally cool putting a rookie that high. I don't need to see much more. I am seeing him do things that veterans haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think that he could end up on your list? Let's take a guess.
I've been having these kinds of conversations often, primarily because of the Justin Herbert discourse, and the top 4 are solidified. It just comes to, the 5, 6, 7, 8 range is where it kind of gets sketchy for me. I have finalized, I think, my 5, 6, 7, some order of Herbert, Stafford, and Stroud. I feel like Stafford's still my 5. He was my 5 going to this season. That hasn't changed. I mean, I get Stroud struggled the second half of the year, but I thought the first half of the season he was doing everything he could with what he had, and then he kind of just started to, fall apart as things around him started to fall apart in the second half of the season. He just kind of became a product of his situation, which is understandable, having to play in the conditions he was dealing with every single week. But for him to game the way he gamed these last 2 weeks, super impressive to me. He became this dual threat quarterback that, we didn't really think he had in him. He's suddenly fast. I've seen 35 tweets of people saying when did CJ Stroud get fast? But it's true. He became a true threat with his legs, which was so imperative to the success of the Texans offense these last couple of weeks. So I'd probably Stroud and Herbert you can interchange at 6 and 7, but then it's 8, 9, 10, etc. I haven't thought beyond this. I think Jayden has a good shot to be my 8.
Yeah, I would put him there. I can't take him over Herbert personally. Still,
Yeah.
I know there's the whole online discourse of everyone wanting to drop him to 30 because he can't win playoff games and he's just the worst of all time. I think Stroud and Daniels is my conversation. And it's hard to put Stroud over him after what Daniels is doing right now. But I think in that 8 range is pretty comfortable for Daniels for me, which is insane for a rookie quarterback. And it's not just talent, it's mental too. Like he has everything going for him with a pretty normal supporting cast. Like it's not bad, it's not great, but it's pretty just regular. I mean, if you ever have Olamide Zaccheaus as like your number 3 receiving option, like that's pretty. You're doing a lot of work yourself to get those points. So, like, just straight kudos to Jayden Daniels and the big Cliff Kingsbury for whipping up an awesome and super fun to watch offense.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I know Goff has been ultra productive, but I'm taking Jayden every day of the week over Goff. Like, and that's probably somebody I would have had in that 8 range before this, I guess. Dak is another name that comes to mind, but I feel like just because of he hasn't played in a while. He also hasn't done anything in the postseason nearly as impressive as Jayden has done so far. But it's once again a question of who else goes, who you put above him. It's not even as much as like Jayden is that good, even though he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a question of, well, who the hell do you think is better?
Yeah.
Like there isn't this laundry list of quarterbacks that have been exceptional, especially this year with the way passing production seemingly was down. And running backs and running the ball kind of seem to make a resurgence, at least for the better teams. Like I can't think of anyone else that jumps off the page as immediately better or in the conversation for him.
No.
And like I said, Goff would have been that guy, but no. Baker, no. I can't think of anyone else, like, genuinely.
I was waiting for Jalen Hurts to come up there from you, but
no. It's not even hate, though. It's not even hate.
It's not. No, it's I hate Jalen Hurts fans, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, no, it's not hate. It's just that's where the conversation seems to be. And it seems to be that Jalen Hurts and Jayden Daniels and Dak Prescott all kind of live in that like just under 10 or around 10 range. But I think Jayden Daniels has elevated himself well past Hurts and kind of in that Dak Prescott highly productive tier.
Jayden's elevated his team more than Hurts ever has in his career. Like, I will give Hurts the flowers for the Super Bowl game he had,
100%,
and that run because he was good, but he has never had to elevate his team to this level, and that's not something I guess you can dock him for, but it's something you could certainly give credit to Jayden for. So that to me is just it's he's just been far better. And there were 2 other things I wanted to touch on with this game before we moved on, because I did have a runner-up for the Commanders that I feel like no one really talked about. And honestly, watching the game, I don't remember him popping up too much. But when I looked back and I saw the numbers he put up, and I did watch some of the full game replay back, Jonathan Allen was actually very good on the interior too. He finished with, because I went back and watched after I saw his numbers a little bit. He had 7 pressures, 2 quarterback hits. PFF charted him with a 25% pass rush win rate percentage. Like, in a game where Goff was crumbling when any sort of pressure got near him, like that was what won Washington the game at times. Like the multiple Goff turnovers came at the hands of Washington defensive front pressure, and Jonathan Allen led the way. I guess watching it, I didn't really think that far, or I wasn't thinking that far, and other guys did contribute, but somebody that, similar to like Jared Verse, who is a part of a pass rush that was disrupting Jalen Hurts, this is kind of the same case, and it worked out for Washington as opposed as it did to Verse. So Jonathan Allen jumped off the page for me.
Yeah, someone that popped off for me was Mike Samberstrell, the little slot corner rookie from Michigan. He was a guy I was so high on.
Really?
But he's tiny, so like
Mhm.
he wasn't in everybody's top 10. But I just kept seeing a explosive Mike Hilton. And I don't know who wouldn't want an explosive Mike Hilton on their football team. Like that would
Yeah.
be incredible. And he balled out. I mean, he had 2 picks. One of them was huge and returned it down into their own territory. And then one was in the red zone. We caught it in the red zone, saving a touchdown. So kudos to the rookie 5'10" on a good day slot corner from Michigan. He killed it. I was so happy to see him killing it. But
that was a textbook rep that he undercut Jameson's route and picked Goff off in the end. I mean, that was as beautiful as it gets from a defensive back teach tape. Like watching it was literally like poetry in motion watching him undercut that. So that was a phenomenal play. I forgot he had 2 picks. I forgot he had the one that Jameson threw as well. So he was phenomenal. Mike Sandristra was. So that's also a good one that flew under my radar somehow. But yeah, that would have been probably my easy runner up had I thought about it further. But the other thing I wanted to ask, and this is something that I controversially proposed when I was making my all-pro rosters, but is there a case to be made for Terry McLaurin over Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah. And it's so hard because I think that Terry McLaurin is a fully scheme diverse football player in that no matter what quarterback or system or positional alignment you want to throw him in, he's going to kill it. He's slot capable, but he can line up as an X or a Y. He can block a little bit. He can kill it after the catch, as you saw. But you can also see that he could dominate you vertically. Amon-Ra St. Brown's productive, but he's pretty limited to the slot. And he's a good blocker and he's good after the catch, but I'm not terrified of him vertically. I'm not scared of him breaking my ankles in man coverage. I think he plays a really good game of what he does. And I think that he does what he does at a super high level, but that's also to the scheme that they're in of a run heavy team, and he can live in the slot. But when the game breaks down and you need a play from just a pure wide receiver, Terry McLaurin's the guy I'm taking. So I don't dislike that claim whatsoever.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't running a fade up the sideline at a cover 0 blitz and catching it in the corner of the end zone against the Bengals. But
never did. Never did.
No, he's not. So yeah, I pitched this to my group chat with my friends earlier. I tweeted it out, but I just don't see how it can be argued. Like you said, he's scheme diverse. Like Terry McLaurin, and he's been productive for a majority of his career. You know, ironically enough, he got probably the best, which is a strong word, quarterback play last year prior to this season, which is really sad to say. And he had like the least productive season of his career. Like Howell was slinging it at an insane rate, but for whatever reason, McLaurin just was not a part of the offense. It was weird. But other than that, like McLaurin has always been involved. He is famously making catches that it boggles your mind. He has the ball. I think he has probably some of the best, if not the best deep ball tracking skills in football. Like him and Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, for me, like those 3 guys are phenomenal at the catch point and being able to like look over their shoulder and bring a ball in. Like that's such an important skill that not all receivers have. And it's something you never see Amon-Ra, I guess have to do because he's never in the position to do it because he probably, can't. So the thing I think about is slot receivers, they have to overly produce to be compared to these other dominant receivers to be put in these conversations. Like Cooper Kupp only reached, the top 5 conversations because of the Triple Crown season and having 1,900 yards or, the records he broke. Like Amon-Ra would have to have that type of season for me to be vaulting him into those, top tier, top echelon receiver talks. Like, but he didn't. He had 1,200 yards, I think he had like 12 touchdowns. Like he had a good year, but statistically speaking, it wasn't dominant enough to be better than a guy like Terry, who I think was invaluable to Washington and Jayden's development. That offense doesn't work without Terry. Jayden isn't Jayden without Terry. Like, I think the case is strong.
Yeah. And that's the thing with receivers is they're used so differently, but they all have the same stats. So like you can only still look at receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And Amon-Ra is usually going to have more yards than Terry in these games. And I think he did have more yards in this game. But what Terry can do feels so much more valuable as that outside receiver who is your saving grace. He is a Hail Mary away. He is a screen pass away from a touchdown. And Amon-Ra has a great position as their slot only blocking wide receiver. He's fantastic. But what Terry can do is just so much more than what Amon-Ra St. Brown can do. And I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't want it to sound like some sort of slam piece on him. And I'm not even 100% sure I would take Terry if I'm building my own football team today. But it's a lot closer than people think. And I think I ultimately probably would prefer Terry in a vacuum over St. Brown.
Yeah, I think the thing that seals it for me is like playing on the boundary is so much more difficult to produce production wise, especially. And Terry, amongst qualifying guys, I just pulled it up. He lined up out wide 84% of the time this season and still was an 1,100-yard receiver, still had 13 touchdowns. I think he finished the year with like the highest passer rating when targeted, which to me is just like a mind-bending stat when you're playing outside that much. Like that's insane to me. Like it's not like he's running option routes from the slot. Like it's something Amon-Ra does a lot. Like there are probably a lot of low percentage throws that reach him that he comes down with. Like
in fact, like, I was about to say, I'm sure if you look at his contested catch numbers, I'm sure he is top 3, if not higher than that for the regular season.
Yeah, he's number 1. He had the most contested catches this year with 24. He was second in contested catch percentage at 70.6%. Like, I mean, the only thing that, like I said, would be enough to put Amon-Ra over him is if he had like 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns. Like it would have had to be ridiculous. And I used to have these emotions toward Michael Thomas when he had his dominant season. Granted, that season was ridiculous, and I have grown as a football observer ever since. But I still have the same kind of like the whole slant boy shit was overdone.
Yeah, God.
But that's a throwback. But like a guy like Terry, to me, I would have probably, if Terry was playing the way he was now versus like how Michael Thomas was back then, I wouldn't have gone as far as to say that I'd rather have Terry, but I think it would have been a closer conversation than in my mind than people would have given it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, Terry's bold. It's bold. I know. I don't know if I can go that far, but Terry felt for a while like the Justin Herbert of wide receivers. He was kind of the hypothetical receiver where like he was putting up like borderline 1,000 yards and very mild touchdown numbers, and everyone was like, if he had a quarterback, he would do it. And they changed him like 6-7 times, and they're like, what about this one? He still doesn't have a quarterback still. And he finally got one that I think can unanimously be voted as a good quarterback, finally. And I don't know how many touchdowns he had, but he had a lot. Like he was killing it this year. And I was so happy to see the hypotheticals finally come true. Because I'm kind of a hypothetical guy myself. I like to imagine if you put a lot of different players in different positions, they could do better. So that's a score for me. I'm happy about it. I don't know if I take him over prime slant boy, but like I'm definitely might put him over current day St. Brown. In fact, I might just do that now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down.
I mean, yeah, he finished second in touchdowns too. He had 13 above Amon-Ra, who had 12. Like that's just improbable. Like, and Amon-Ra had like a little over 100 more yards, but Amon also had what's 18 plus 15, whatever that number
I
is.
don't know.
Whatever that number is, he had that many
They
more
were-
catches than Terry too.
Yeah.
So
Against the blitz does math. I don't know how to do that, but yeah, fuck yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, hot take or not. I feel like that should be more of a unanimous take. I feel like that it will never
Yeah.
be, but
It won't.
no.
There's going to be a lot of Lions fans that are. Well, I mean, my favorite discourse that actually goes on is when a team loses and all their fans hate their players. So Lions fans might not be mad at you anymore. They might be willing to agree with you. But
They might be done with Goff. Like, I wonder how that.
they're definitely done with. Hendon Hooker time. Let's go.
He wasn't even the backup. I cannot believe.
No, he wasn't. Teddy Two Gloves came in.
How long have they had him now? 3 years?
I don't know. He just won a state championship as a coach like 3 weeks ago. I
I'm
don't
talking about Hendon. Hendon's been in this franchise for a while now.
I thought you were talking about how he got benched for Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know what. Yeah, Hendon Hooker's what? He was the second round pick. Was he a rookie last year?
No.
Or was he 2 years ago?
It wasn't Pickett's year, was it?
No.
That was Malik Willis. And then it might have been 3 years.
I should know this. This is gonna bother me. I think because he had the ACL tear. I want to say 2 years ago, and then that sounds about right.
It was 2 or 3.
Either way, yes. Either way, like I can't believe that they put Teddy Bridgewater as their backup quarterback for a playoff game, and he got minutes.
Yep.
And he had 3 yards. Coach Bridgewater.
That encompasses the game that the Lions had on Saturday.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
I know. I did have a thought. Well, that I saw someone else have this thought, and then it became my thought that if Ben Johnson goes to the Raiders, Hendon Hooker traded for a late round pick would actually be really, really fun.
I saw that.
But
God. I can't imagine anyone wants anything to do with Hendon Hooker if he's not even the backup at this point. Like,
I don't know why. I feel like he's played okay in the games that he's played, but I'm not there at practice, so I don't know. But God, speaking of Stroud, while we're rambling about the Lions, this is one of those playoff games where like he didn't have like a fantastic stat line, but it felt like his team let him down.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate doing it. This is the only time you'll ever catch me doing it, but the refs let him down too. And I hate doing that so much. I'm not just a salty anti-Chiefs person. I swear, but like those calls made me so mad. I was so mad that entire game.
Yeah, I have not been that angry as a football fan. I think I said this to you. I said I've never been that angry as a football fan in a very, very long time. Like,
no,
I don't think those calls necessarily determine the outcome, but for anyone trying to argue that they didn't directly impact the trajectory of the game, you'd be lying because they did.
Yes, I think people can look at it in terms of if it happened, even if he got a first down on the play, like it didn't help that much because he already got the first down. But 15 yards is a ton of yards to just be handed multiple times. Like if at any point in the game I could just press a button and just sprout 15 yards randomly, like that would really be a difference. You would be mad if I had that button and I was playing against you. But it was one thing I answered somebody on Twitter in that I don't think the refs necessarily want the Chiefs to win. Like I don't think that they are all colluding together and agreeing to do that. But I think that KC more than any other team tries to exploit a bad position for the refs to be in, because the refs have to make a call, a judgment call in full time, in real time, full speed, and they are purposely sliding late, purposely staying in bounds until the very last second, and then quickly stepping out to bait a late hit. I think that they are purposefully making it look like they're being held, even if they're not, because a holding call is better than an incomplete pass.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's more to them pulling a James Harden and trying to bait penalties and flags rather than the refs hating or loving them. But the frustration is real. I am 1000% on that train.
I could not have said it better. Like I was gonna say, like, people that are upset with Mahomes they're directing their anger improperly. Like, anyone that is competing on that level, on that stage, should be doing whatever they can to exploit and get an advantage any single second. I don't blame Mahomes for trying to be a weasel, for trying to get extra yards, for trying to exploit. For trying to exploit opportunity, and that's what he's become so good at. Like, yeah, he managed to bait two Texans players into lowering their helmets and diving straight at him. Like, it was 100% a fine play, but because of how quarterbacks are protected, he took the chance and he avoided a hit and got 15 yards. Like, it drove I've never been more mad in my life. Like, I saw him dance there because I play touch football too on the weekends, and I'm not like the big body. I'm the shiftier, fast, athletic white kid. And I'll do that shit where, like, I'll stand behind somebody because they can't block, and then I'll try to, like, fake one way and then go another. But then when I'm boxed in, I'll just kind of, like, fall. Like, I've done that before, and they can't hit me, obviously. But Mahomes did exactly what I feel like I have personally done, and he drew a penalty for it. Like, he knew what he was doing. Like, he 100% knew what he was doing.
I think that's not their full game plan. But I think it's instilled in them 1000% that, like, you draw flags when you can. And if you're not going to win the rep as a pass rusher, you flail and you make it look like you're being held if you're not. And if you're in a scrum, if you're in the pile, flail your arms back like you just got punched. Like, I think that they are willing to do whatever it takes to win. And it works. Like, they are the winningest team over the last, so many years, and it works, but it's so stupid to watch as a team that tries to do everything right. Like, if your team's not doing that and their team is, it's infuriating. So, like, either every other team has to start doing that, or the refs have to understand who they're calling games for and realize that they're being baited into these calls, and it can be a little bit more of a judgment call than I think that they're letting it be. Especially when it looked like Mahomes got hit in the head in full speed, but when you slow it down, you can obviously see he got skimmed, if that. So it's just so hard to put these refs in a position where they're a few yards away and they have to see two mammoths of a men colliding directly at Mahomes' head. It's hard to see that they missed by a few inches, but it's annoying that he's putting them in that position. And that's what the frustration, I think, is more towards. I don't think that many people actually think that there is like 15 refs in a room and they all just have like a painting of Mahomes in like surrounded by candles. Like, I don't think that.
All due respect actually to football fans, but I think you're giving people way too much credit. I think people do firmly believe that Mahomes is like sacrificing practice squad players before the game. Like, they're having like pregame rituals with like devil signs and 666 drawn on the floor and literally like raising up a practice squad player to hell. Like, I really or down. Like,
Herb
people,
Smith Jr.
literally like I literally think that people believe that. Like, they really think that. But yeah, you said it best, and it's kind of the same thing with the Juwan Taylor shit. Like, every week we get upset that Juwan Taylor is seemingly, false starting every play. Well, guess what? Andy Reid is going to tell Juwan, keep doing it. 5 yards is 5 yards. They're going to call you for it once or twice a game. Fuck it. We'll take the extra step every rep if we can. Like, and I said I've said the same thing about Sauce too. It's like people bitch about Sauce holding and grabbing and being too physical. It's like, if you can get away with it, and he has consistently, and if you can understand, like, in a big moment, if you remember when Cortland Sutton and Sauce were one-on-one in the end zone a couple of years ago, Sauce broke it up. People were bitching about how he was holding him.
God.
He knows in that spot the refs are not throwing this flag unless I do something egregious. So he is going to be more handsy. He understands the moment. He understands the bind that refs are in. And that is smart to me. That's smart. It's smart. Any competitor that wants to truly win is going to do that shit.
Yes. And I also don't think that that's the whole reason they won, because of the man who I wrote down, George Karlaftis. That Greek son of a bitch just went absolutely bananas at the end of this game when it felt like Houston was so close to touching a first down, getting a win, and it was Blake Fisher their right tackle for this game? I don't remember who it was for this game. But either way,
are you talking about on the last play though, or are you just saying generally?
I mean, one of his 3 sacks or his 8 pressures that he ended up being credited for, which is absurd for a defensive end whose specialty isn't like volume pass rush. Like, he's not a guy designed to have a bunch of bend
Right.
and like he's not a Leonard Floyd or someone that's like designed for that. Like, he is like a souped up 23-year-old defensive end that happened to just maul whoever was playing right tackle. I feel like it was Blake Fisher, but I could be wrong. Either way, 8 pressures, 4 QB hurries, 3 sacks, 4 defensive stops. He was bananas. Like, he was absolutely bananas. Travis Kelce had an incredible game, as much as I hate to say it sometimes. But yeah, if a defensive player is getting those kind of numbers, it's not all the refs' fault.
100%. Karlaftis was my MVP as well. Like, he on the final third down when the Texans went to kick a field goal. I think this was the drive that ended up getting blocked, but nonetheless, like, it was like one of the Texans' last ditch efforts, and it was a 4-man rush. Karlaftis got double teamed. He found himself up against Dalton Schultz, who he just smothered. And then Dare Ogunbowale also tried to come in and help, and he smoked them both, and he got to Stroud and he sacked him.
I was watching that game with a top hat on, and I was so do you know how it looks to be mad in a top hat? It's like, it's so stupid to look mad in a top hat, but I was, because I saw them in the most crucial play of the game block the best defensive end on that team without using a lineman. We've seen the experiment before where you chip them with a tight end and an undersized running back.
Yep.
It's not, it doesn't work. It's not even like they were using like a good blocking tight end or a big running back.
Dalton Schultz.
Use Dalton Schultz and a like 200-pound running back. Like, it's Karlaftis. You're gonna lose, and they lost so fast. It wasn't even like it was a hustle sack. Like, it wasn't a coverage sack. Like, he just demolished them both.
Yep.
and then demolished Stroud. Like, that was so sad.
I felt bad for. I mean, getting sacked 8 times is just gross.
Yes.
But on that point of Travis Kelce, like, he wasn't even my runner-up. Like, I felt like Travis Kelce had an impressive game generally, but also it was impressive because we know him as the 35-year-old, tight end that is very rarely making too many splash plays anymore, but everything feels amplified because of the circumstances.
Yeah.
But, most of his production to me came at the expense of just awful breakdowns by Houston. Like, his big catch and run, Azeez Al-Shahir is like sprinting to the sideline unnecessarily. His touchdown, Azeez Al-Shahir is like trying to turn his head like this and watch for Kelce, and he's just running.
Basically, Azeez just had a horrible few plays in a horrible game.
Yeah. Like, he had 1 rep against the safety. I think, who's number 27 for the Texans? Do you have any idea?
Is that Kalen Bullock?
Is it? I was going to say, is Eric Murray a safety? Like, why does that name jump off to me?
He is. I don't know which number he is,
but
I know Bullock is like a tall and lean safety with long hair. I don't know if that helps you at all. I don't remember their numbers.
27.
Eric Murray is.
Let's see. Now I got to know. Texans depth chart.
It could be Eric Murray. I can't remember what number he is.
Eric Murray, 23. Fuck, who's 27? You might be right. Then Kalen Bullock. Oh, he's 21. Who the fuck is 27? No, it's not MJ Stewart.
It's not EP.3. Let's go through all the safeties on the Texans. I've gone through all.
Was it a DB? Was it a corner? Jeff Okuda's 11 for some weird fucking reason.
And he shouldn't be on the field, so who else is there?
Miles Bryant. Okay.
No way that little guy's.
Yeah.
I didn't even catch him out there.
He had a rep against Miles Bryant. It was man coverage. And he ran one-on-one, and he cooked him on a dig. That was really the only rep I saw where I was like, okay, Kelsey. And he also had some yards after catch, too. Other than that, it was like, it was a good game, but I feel like Noah Gray could have gotten lost around Aziz on some of these, too. It just happened to be Kelsey, so.
The only reason I've watched so much Kelsey. I mean, he went to college down the road from me. Mm-hmm. I've watched a ton of Kelsey, and he's so subtle with how he can just exploit a defense. Like, it doesn't have to even be that good of a route. Mm-hmm. He will just start like naturally backpedaling into a space that is open. And he does it every time. Like we can't even call it luck anymore. Mm-hmm. He does it every playoff game we've ever watched, and just like somehow quietly gets 117 yards and a touchdown against one of the top defenses. I was like, it felt like he had a pretty good game when I watched it, and then I looked back, seeing 7 catches for 117 and a touchdown. That's ridiculous for being for being relatively like I don't want to say quiet because he wasn't quiet. But like he was just so like smooth and steady. Like there was nothing felt explosive. He just slowly throughout the game accumulated 117 yards and a touchdown, which feels crazy to say, but like I mean, I can't call it a bad game by any means.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm probably being slightly too harsh. There's just something to Kelsey's game that people will never understand. It's like people view it so black and white. It's like Tyreek Hill is just fast. That's why he's good. It's like no, that's not why Tyreek Hill is a nearly 2,000-yard receiver. And people are like, how come no one can tackle that big, slow 35-year-old oaf? It's like, well, because it's not that simple either. He's not just slow. He's, in fact, very – I like to use the word deceptive. Like, he changes direction so smoothly for a guy his size and especially his age. And I think that's what makes him so tough to guard is because he kind of keeps you off balance. He's kind of like – something that I hear about Luka Doncic a lot is he plays the game very slow, but he's always in a different rhythm. He's always moving at a different pace. And it makes him super tough to guard, at least as I've heard from NBA players themselves. Yeah. And that's kind of how it feels with Kelsey. It's like he plays at a speed that might not look fast, but it's all about timing and understanding leverage and being quick in your movement. Like that is very, very important when it comes to getting open, and Kelsey does it better than anybody.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go with is like the leverage argument is like some people have a natural understanding of being able to manipulate someone else's movement without touching them. Like they can move this way because they understand that you're going to move that way and cut back another way. And they understand your zone. They understand what zone coverage you're in. And just his body will naturally flow away from it into the soft spot. You've done it 1,000 times in his career. So sometimes even when you're a 35-year-old, that's kind of relatively slow for a tight end anymore. Like he still moves quick because he's so confident in his routes that he's going to get open. And it's dirty. Like it's so annoying because it feels like every time you're like, oh, how did he get open again? He's the only guy on the team that's any good.
I hate that.
I hear it every time that he catches a pass, especially from, I assume Buffalo also does not like Kansas City. So like if you're like any watch room in either of our cities would probably hate Kelsey. And everyone watching the game was like, how he's the only guy you have to cover. Like, how is he open every single time? Like, I don't know. They don't know either. Like no one can figure it out. So until then, after what, like 12 years of doing this, no one's figured it out. So I'm not going to call it like too lucky at this point. I feel like he's just doing stuff that I can't comprehend. So I still have to keep him as my honorable mention for just how timely it felt like he was getting every single first down that he got. It was right when I feel like they had to stop. Yeah. And then, there's that oaf again.
Yep, there's that big oaf. There's somebody tweeted out, Someone tweeted out Unk still got it, and the fucking dude with the jump rope. You know what I'm talking about?
No, but I need to see that.
There's a stupid GIF. It's captioned "Unk still got it," and it's some dude like swinging a jump rope underneath him, but he's like sitting and bouncing on the ground. Like it's perfect because it fits so well for Travis Kelce. But
I know, and it sucks to take away from my Texans MVP. My actual MVP is Will Anderson.
Wait, hold on. Before you go to the Texans, I did have my runner-up I wanted to touch on too.
Oh, yes. Get your runner-up.
I feel like he was excellent. And early in the game, he went down and he went out, and I thought they were going to be in a world of trouble. But I went with Trent McDuffie. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, fuck me. Trent McDuffie is so good. And every time I see him play well for the stupid-ass team, I get so upset because he should be a Bill. I really wanted him to be a Bill. Like, Next Gen Stats tweeted out that with McDuffie as the nearest defender to Nico Collins, Nico ran 15 routes, had 3 targets, and a catch for 24 yards. He finished with 3 pass breakups, 3 tackles. There was an opportunity earlier in the game when Nico ran an out route and Stroud threw it, and McDuffie completely undercut it. And shockingly enough, he didn't take it to the house. Like, he probably could have. Like, he was so good. And I thought if he went down at any point like he did, it could have been bad because they were kind of deploying the Bill Belichick double the first receiver and then have the top corner man the second best guy. They were doing that, and without Trent, like, even though the receivers weren't great for Houston, which we'll get to, it still would have hurt. So I just wanted to get that in there quick because McDuffie was excellent.
Yeah, and part of me doesn't want to ever see him do well because every time that I post about how good Pat Surtain is, I get like 10 Chiefs fans in the comments putting up like 2023 PFF grades about my McDuffie is better and how he has more tackles for loss. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but he is a fantastic player. Like, he's an all-pro for a reason last year. I mean, I don't know how tall he is, but he's not tall. He's just pure grit. And it's so weird how he gets scored touchdown. He gets scored on by the most random receivers of all time. But when it comes to just shutting down an elite wide receiver one, he torches them every time. Like, he shuts them down every single time. So that's a really good honorable mention because, like, you don't really see it on the stat sheet, like what he did, because Collins still had a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no stats. Like, he didn't really have any interceptions or anything. But, like, if you can watch the game, you feel his impact every time that he's healthy on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Spags can't do what Spags wants to do without Trent McDuffie. Like, Spagnuolo is, oh man, I think the Mahomes Andy Reid tax is finally gonna be docked. Like, at some point he has to get another opportunity. Like,
I was about to say, how is he not getting interviews? Okay, and Eddie George just got an interview today.
Jason Witten got an interview, dude. Like, what the fuck?
That's so stupid.
Oh man.
Jason Witten. I hate Jerry Jones so much. I'm not even going to get into that. I'd rather get into Will Anderson.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anything other than Jerry Jones is just fucking horrible. But, like, Will Anderson, for being a second-year player and already feeling like he's one of the premium pass rushers in the game, is like, that's really good development for being a fairly raw player. Like, he didn't really have much of a toolbox coming out in his pattern. He was just a big athletic player. But I think being alongside Danielle Hunter has really helped spring him and just kind of let him just be like this attacking style athletic edge, which helped him get 2 sacks and 4 defensive stops as a run defender in that game. So, like, he would be by far my MVP if they had won this game. But unfortunately, all those the second half inevitable collapse happened, special teams and officiating wise. But I also would like to note I have my anti-MVP on here.
Okay.
Would you like to guess who my anti-MVP is from this game?
Is this a both teams award?
Oh no, just Texans.
My anti-MVP.
The furthest thing from the best player of this game.
Oh boy.
Hint, he's a kicker.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I honestly was overthinking it. Yes, I think he is well deserving of said award.
Yeah, that was a bad showing. I like you
dare I say.
quietly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I saw like you tweeted out how like you get it's windy, but like come on. That kick that didn't have a prayer. I know it's not cold in Hawaii or Houston, which is like the only places Fairbairn has ever been. And like UCLA, I think he went. So I don't think he knows anything about the cold. But good God, that was horrific. And then just to put what were you saying?
I was going to say, when someone you're watching with asks, was that blocked? You know the kick was atrocious. And I was like, no, that was not blocked. That was not blocked.
And then it did later.
Yes.
And Leo Chenal. Was Leo Chenal the one that blocked the one against the Broncos too? I want to say he was.
It might have been. I think so.
It was definitely a white dude. And they only have so many.
I was gonna say Chris Jones. So if it wasn't Chris Jones, then and it was a white dude, then yeah, it probably was Chanel. I guess
if he has 2 game-winning field goal blocks as a linebacker, that doesn't feel very common. Like it's either like some 6'6" defensive tackle like Chris Jones or like a corner that gets around the edge.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare that like a big bulky linebacker that comes in from like the 3/4 slot can just break a lineman and block 2 kicks in the same season. So if it was him that blocked 2, another kudos, because that was just the icing on the cake. Like that was the official stamp on the game as the game winner. So there's a lot of good play on the Chiefs that none of it mentioned Mahomes. So that's even scarier, is if they can win a game pretty comfortably without Mahomes really doing anything at all. This is going to be a really, really, really good game.
Yeah.
The
Chiefs, to me, are. I mean, I think the Eagles still fit this description too, but the Chiefs scare me much more than the Eagles because both of them are playing a style of football that requires very little from their quarterback.
Yep.
And, well, at least as far as Mahomes goes, he might not be doing much, but he's making the plays he has to, whereas Jalen Hurts is just completely hurting his team. So I guess it still is a different level to it, but nonetheless, like,
I didn't say it.
They are both like still managing to win games without the involvement, without their superstar quarterbacks having to go, over the top. So that is something that is scary to say the least. And this is not completely off topic, but back to the whole like exploitation thing that the Chiefs do. I feel like their luck is a topic of conversation that comes up a lot. Like, how are the Chiefs always getting so lucky? How do they always catch these breaks? And my argument to that is when you're a team that is consistently putting yourself in a situation to, I guess, make a play. How did I phrase it? I can't remember. Basically,
Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, like they might be getting lucky to the average viewer, but they're consistently putting themselves in situations to. Oh, man, I wish I remember how I fucking said it. But they're not just winning these one-score games off of luck. Like, yeah, they've stumbled across some bobbled snaps and such, but they're still making plays. Is, I guess, the bottom line.
Yes, and you'll see some teams where they feel lucky. Like it felt like the Pittsburgh Steelers were a little lucky that earlier this season.
Mm-hmm.
That they had a lot of games go their way against bad teams, and they won on, lucky special teams or defense. But you knew their team wasn't better than the other. Like it didn't feel like it was coaching. Like you just kind of felt like it was luck.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out that the luck ran out pretty quick. But sometimes when it's the Chiefs, and it happens since like 2018 or 2019, like, okay, like maybe the last 6 years aren't a fever dream. Like maybe it wasn't just luck for half of a decade. Like maybe there's a chance that this team is just really well coached and really well executed to a like disgusting degree that they're able to feel really comfortable in one-score games and, if needed, exploit officiating. I mean, how many times have the Bengals lost to them off of like a single defensive flag, like a Joseph Osai, I'll never forget, or a Dejon Anthony?
No.
This last year, there was a fourth and forever, and they throw a ball straight up in the air, and the rookie safety got there a hair too late. They're both fighting for the ball. They got the call, and they won the game on a field goal. Like, it happens all the time, but like, it feels like targeting the rookie safety in his first career game ever isn't a mistake. Like, that wasn't an accident. Like, you go after vulnerable people, and that's a thing that you kind of just do subconsciously. So, yeah, I don't think it's luck. I think that Andy Reid is one of the greatest football coaches of all time, and the accolades speak for themselves. But if you actually watch the game, like we've said before, like, they're never on the wrong side of clock management.
Right.
Like, they always seem to have another trick up their sleeve. And like, I don't know. I don't have enough words to say about how good I think Andy Reid is. But
yeah. Well, finding ways to win is an art. Like,
yes,
that's the thing. Like, it's not something that you don't stumble into victories, and they always are finding a way to have one more play than the other team that gets them over the hump. And like, that's not a coincidence, like you said.
No, and finding a way to just crush that spread creatively for all those little sports betting fiends that would bet on a playoff game like that on a spread. Like, I hope they do that every time. I hope you get so happy. You're like, okay, please just put the ball away. And then like Matt Araiza just starts running backwards. You're like, no. Then, like, that was just pure gold. And like, the amount of people that have gone after Andy Reid thinking that like he intentionally did that. Like, it's just a coup with Vegas. The fix is in. Like, Vegas runs football. Like, that was,
get over yourself.
That was so stupid.
Yeah,
that was so stupid.
Well, on that note, my MVP for the Texans, if not Will Anderson, which it would have been, but I knew you were going with him, so I had to go with Stroud. I mean, like, Stroud to me, just he did everything he could. Like you said, it felt like his team let him down at times. It felt like the officiating let him down at times. You know, he had a couple errors. You know, he took a couple sacks that you're probably like, would have been nice if he could have gotten that ball out. But it's like the style of game he had to play to give them a chance. It would have been too flawless for any human to pull off. Like, he would have had to been picture perfect every down, and getting that ball out before X sack that might have looked bad. You know, that's just something that you can't dock him for when he's having to deal with the amount of pressure, especially in the second half. I mean, Spags was just like blitz. He just spammed the fucking blitz button in the second half, and these motherfuckers up front could not figure out a stunt for their life. Like, it is impossible for these guys to do anything up front. Like, the second there's more than 4 guys coming, it's like brain breaks for Houston's offensive line.
God, I mean, so bad.
He, like we said it earlier, sacked 8 times. He was pressured on 21 of 41 of his dropbacks, which is 51.2%. And he was blitzed 17 times. And on those 17 blitzes, he was pressured 12 times. And 12 of those pressures came from unblocked pass rushers. So, like, and this is without mentioning the fact that he targeted someone named Jared Wayne twice. He hasn't had a target all year, and he saw 2 targets in this game. So he was getting blitzed out the ass, and he was throwing to guys that were not NFL caliber players. Like,
no, is that Jared Wayne from like Pittsburgh that went undrafted a few years? Like, that is ridiculous if that's the same Jared Wayne that I'm thinking of, because that guy was not an NFL caliber player. And he was in, I remember, like, the one target where Stroud got blitzed and he threw up a ball on like 3rd and long, 4th and long, and Wayne almost caught it. But like, the fact that he was in it all, why?
Yeah.
Like, I saw Nico Collins was on the sideline for a little bit, but there's no way you can't like skim Scam your practice squad. Be like, please, there's somebody better.
Like Deontay Johnson could not have been this much of a headache. Like
There's no way.
There's no way. Like
he's a decent football player when he actually plays. Like just let him annoy you for another game and have him. Don't let him get snaps until unless he's needed. But
right.
He can run an out route. I've seen him do it. Like he can get open. It just depends what happens before or after that. But he can get open. So that's just weird. I feel bad. I can't keep up mentally with the interior O-line rotation that Houston's going with right now. I don't know if Juice Scruggs played in this game or
I don't know.
I think they moved. I think a while ago they moved Titus Howard inside back to guard.
Is Kenyon Green still up there? I hope not.
Oh my God! I hope first round pick Kenyon Green.
I fucking hope not. That guy should have been cut after the first season.
He's an oaf. That guy's an oaf.
I can't talk about an oaf. If he was getting open like Travis Kelce was, then we would have concerns. Like if Kenyon Green was the oaf that people think Travis Kelce is. Wait, how do I phrase that? He's not an oaf. Kelce's not an oaf. That's an oaf.
That is an oaf. God bless. Like Jackson Carman. He's fucking awful. So awful. But what's bad is I don't think that he's even getting playing time because I think that the other guys are just as bad.
I think Shaq Mason might have taken it. Oh, no, they were playing
Shaq Mason
at one point.
Yeah, Shaq Mason was playing earlier this year because I did remember ranking guards this year, and he had 1 star from me, only behind my own Alex Kappa.
Oh man!
So who leads the league in sacks, pressures, and hurries given up? But besides the point, yeah. God, that was a rough game to watch. That hurt my soul as somebody who predicted the Texans to win. Oh. It felt like I had something there. It felt like I had some marbles rolling my way. But
yeah, I mean, throw for 245, no turnovers. Stroud, I went through and looked at the play-by-play and did math, which was hard, but I did it. He converted 8 on third down. Stroud had the ball passing or running. He converted 8 of 13 on third down. A couple massive scrambles for first downs. He did everything he could. He had that throw. I know it kind of was in that part of the game where it really didn't matter, but they were still trying. But that layered toss to Schultz on the sideline was perfect. That was the type of CJ Stroud ball we haven't seen since last year. I feel like he was making throws like that consistently last season. And I feel like it's been kind of missing these last few weeks, but seeing it again, it rejuvenated how strongly I felt about Stroud's rookie season. And there was another play he had. It broke down. He rolled left. He changed his platform last second and got it to Nico, who made a phenomenal catch. I think that was the same drive. I mean, when I say a guy did everything humanly possible, I mean it. He's a human who's going to make mistakes, but what else can you ask for him?
Yeah, I don't think, except for maybe Goff, I don't think I'm really going to hold any of these losses against the quarterbacks. It wasn't all the way Goff's fault. I mean, I know some of the points they gave up were from interceptions, but 45 is a lot of points regardless. So, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those times where you can really just call it football team versus football team. You don't have to look at individual performances to see what went right and what went wrong. Trying to pick MVPs in all of these games were so hard because we've reached a point in the football season where it's not just guys carrying teams. These are football teams. The only people left are football teams.
This will be all for naught as a Bills fan if we go through this enjoyment of beating the unbeatable and then having to go to Kansas City and falling to the sword of the Chiefs again.
I can't do it again.
It'll be heartbreaking.
I think I'm rooting for the Commanders too.
I think
I have to.
Yeah, the good guy in me wants the Commanders to win.
Don't do it.
Arrest me now, sports better side of me, because I took the Eagles Bills in the Super Bowl.
You monster.
I know. I put a future in Eagles Bills Super Bowl. It's September 5th. And so It was going to be the Lion. I also had a Lions-Bills ticket, and I would have had a guaranteed shot for the NFC if those motherfuckers didn't fold. But
yeah,
I need
I have one that exists. I'm not a veteran by any means, but I have Ohio State winning tomorrow. So I will be praying for that one. That's an old placement. So I'll be really excited if Ryan Day can just keep it up one more game.
They should win that game. I feel like they should win that game by like 60. Like, no bullshit.
Yeah, and like I was trying to explain to someone their path to victory, and I kind of just said like they're just gonna score more points than them. But that's really it. Like, it's two good defenses against each other. Like, they're both awesome defenses. Like, possibly the top two defenses in college. But one just has a better offense. Like, literally, they're just going to score more points. Like, it's that simple. So, unless there's another Ryan Day disaster class, I think Ohio State should just pummel Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Notre Dame.
I said, I don't know what the spread is for this game, but I said to one of my buddies, like, the only reason this game spread isn't, like, minus 45 in favor of Ohio State is because of Ryan Day.
I'm only watching because of the draft pick standpoint, but there's probably 30 like top like round 5 or higher picks this game. So if anyone has any interest in the NFL draft, this is your game to watch because this game is just stacked full of prospects. But I mean, I think it's just incredible that they decided for this week to be the presidential inauguration because I don't give a shit because there's so much good football that like I don't care. I could care less. So as we have learned, football is more important than politics. And it's going to stay that way on this podcast.
Damn right. I cannot believe that the national championship is on. I think it's going to be on at like the same time.
Yeah, and I'm watching that one. I don't give a shit about
the inauguration. I'm watching the
I don't care.
God damn it.
Yes. Yeah. Jack Sawyer is going to be my president for the next 24 hours.
But yeah, that's about all we have for the third installment. It was a good one, a fun weekend of football ahead. So the next episode I'm going to throw out here now, if it works, could be Thursday morning. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening, watching, supporting as much as you have so far. TikTok, I guess, is back. So follow us there. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Any social media against the Blitz, be sure you're following us individually as well at the Caveman NFL, at Football with Oz. All of the links in the description. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. No outro.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
No outro.
Do the thing.